What if the most powerful technology in human history wasn't digital, but divine? Before Wi-Fi or AI, human societies built another kind of code, religious scripture. These weren't just stories about God, they were systems, early social technologies designed to organize human life. They told people how to live, what to value, and who had authority. In this video, I'll explore how scriptures from Judaism, Christianity, and Islam became blueprints for moral order and how they still shape power and freedom today. So, what exactly do I mean by social technologies? Think of it like this: religion built its own version of code. Scriptures like the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran were designed, edited, and translated to preserve a way of life. They didn't just record divine words, they engineered moral systems. My thesis of this is religious scriptures developed as a form of social technology that encodes power, shapes morality, and stabilizes society, while also creating a space for resistance and liberation. When we look at the development of scripture, it's really a story of human design decisions. In Judaism, the Torah was canonized to preserve covenant law and cultural identity during the Babylon exile. Within Christianity, the biblical canon was formalized by early church councils seeking to establish unity and doctrinal orthodoxy amid competing interpretations. In Islam, the Quran was compiled under Caliph Uthman to standardize recitation and prevent textual variation across the expanding Muslim community. These weren't random events, they were deliberate acts of canonization, the first software updates of moral technology. The decision makers, priests, prophets, scholars, claimed divine authority, but they were also political architects. They created systems of meaning that would outlive empires. Sociologist Parsons would call this pattern maintenance system, a cultural engine that keeps moral order running smoothly. Meanwhile, Foucault would say this is an example of pastoral power, a kind of leadership that guides and disciplines people, not through violence, but through care, confession, and constant moral oversight. It's like religion invented the first form of soft power, which influenced through belief and not brute force. Religion often provides the shared values that anchor moral behavior and solve what philosophers call the Hobbesian problem of order: how to maintain stability without coercion. Parsons described this terms of social functions known as agile. Scripture might seem spiritual, but it's deeply technical. It's the system that encodes these values. Think of it, think of its design features: canonization, choosing which texts made the cut; translation, adapting divine language for new audiences; interpretation, deciding who gets to explain what it means; and authority, giving institutions control over truth. Through these mechanisms, religion doesn't just preserve belief, it programs the moral logic that holds societies together. As Hinton notes, even translating an Algerian Bible into the modern world changes meaning. What redemption meant in ancient Israel was partly economic or social. Today, it's primarily spiritual. Every translation and interpretation offers new insights into Scripture, revealing that a term meaningful in one society may carry a different weight in another. But design choices comes with trade-offs, such as unity versus diversity, authority versus accessibility. That's where power enters this picture. Religion has always been about relationships of power. Foucault helps us see that these relationships aren't just about kings or laws, they're also about how truth itself gets defined. He describes biopolitical power, which is basically control over life itself, how societies regulate birth, death, health, and behavior. Scripture played right into that. It defined who counted as pure or impure, holy or sinful, shaping everything from gender roles to family life. Building on Parsons, James Christ shows how religion operates alongside other control systems such as law and medicine. Scripture works at all three levels. It sets moral expectations, legitimizes laws, and even defines healthy or holy behavior. So when we talk about religion as a social control, we're not saying it's evil. We're saying it's structural. It gives society rules to follow, but also labels anyone outside those rules as deviant or sinful. Parsons would agree that's necessary. It keeps society stable. But Foucault warns that stability often comes with cost of freedom. History shows both sides. Scripture has justified hierarchies like divine right monarchies, gender inequality, and regulated sexuality. But it also inspired revolutions. Take liberation theology in Latin America. Priests reinterpreted the Exodus story to call for freedom from oppression. Or the civil rights movement, where pastors like Dr. King use verses like Galatians 3:28. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male or female, to proclaim equality before God. As Ladwick notes, religion can become a reservoir of resistance, a space where oppressed people use faith to fight back against the very systems that control them. So, scripture is never just one thing. It can function as both a mechanism of order and a tool of rebellion. For centuries, interpretations were centralized. Priests, rabbis, and imams controlled the narrative. But today, with the internet and AI, that power gets decentralized. Anyone can compare translations, challenge the interpretations, or even generate new ones. It's empowering, but it also fragments authority. Who defines the truth when everyone can speak for God? Foucault might call this the digital version of pastoral power, a global flock guided by algorithms, and Parson might say the moral system is adapting, finding new ways to sustain cultural order. So, should we be optimistic or cautious? Probably both. On one hand, scripture gave humanity moral structure, empathy, and hope. On the other hand, it perpetuated inequality and restricted dissent. Its impact, its impact depends on who wields it and how it's interpreted. The technology of scripture now runs on open source, and that's both thrilling and terrifying. Here's what I've learned. Scripture is a living technology. It encodes moral DNA that gets passed from generation to generation, what Parsons would call the pattern maintenance of society. But like any code, it can be hacked, corrupted, or rewritten. We've gained meaning, structure, and hope, but we've also lost nuance, silenced voices, and sometimes replaced love with law. As we move into the digital age, the question isn't whether scripture still holds power, it's who controls its interpretations. Will it remain a tool for obedience or become a technology for liberation? Because in the end, scripture isn't just ancient words, it's a social operating system, and how we run it determines the kind of world we create. I'm not saying God didn't inspire scripture, I'm saying humans engineered it, and that might be the most divine part of it all.